Setting boundaries isn't selfish, and I'm going to tell you why. Setting boundaries isn't selfish for a good few reasons. Often I hear this a lot from clients. I hear them be like, well, I want to set these boundaries, but am I like a terrible person? Am I selfish? What's wrong with me? And today I want to talk about a few places where that comes from and also why setting boundaries isn't selfish. So I'm going to start with where that comes from. It often comes from being pushed into a certain position in your relationships. So you might have been raised by somebody that struggles to maybe be empathetic or caring, and you're used to like being disappointed and having your needs not met in one way or another, right? It might be that they weren't there when you needed them there. It might be that they just drop the ball, man. They don't show up. I see this in my personal life. I've had this happen to me, but I also see this with clients, and I think it leads to a certain psychological place and a toxic dynamic. So I just wanted to highlight that a bit today. But it often comes from neglect in some form, and that might be a strong word for some of you to hear. But it's really hard to have boundaries when you're kind of really dependent on another party to feel a closeness, to feel validated and understood. One of your core kind of caregiver relationships, often it could be a parent, grandparent, foster parent, depending on your situation. If you don't even have caregivers, that can come up too, because you're desperate for that kind of like closeness. But setting boundaries can be really, really tough when you don't have that, right? You think of a person in the desert who's desperate for a drink. They can't turn away a drink, right? Even if it's a toxic bit of sewage, right? Cholera is quite common in certain communities for this very reason. But I'm going to talk about why it's actually, in fact, a good idea to set boundaries, and boundary setting isn't selfish. So part of you is going to feel like, oh man, if I do this, like, am I a terrible person for not giving more and more and more? But the reality of that is that you're kind of enabling the other party to think of you kind of as a lesserly important person in this dynamic, right? You've got maybe they're kind of the adult and you're the child in a way. They go, hey, I want this, and you go, okay, sorry, I suck, I'll do what you ask. When this dynamic is set up subconsciously, and it might be set up like that because it's hard for you to say no, and it might be hard for you to say no because you're not, sometimes you get your needs met, sometimes you don't. But when this dynamic is set up, they're going to take advantage of you. They are going to sock the life out of you in some ways. They're going to give you a little what you want, and they're going to take a lot more. And you're going to keep putting up with it because they're going to give a little, which is better than nothing, right? And the sad part of the situation is that, like, you're not doing anything wrong, and it makes sense while you're in this dynamic, but setting boundaries is going to be really hard, right? Because setting boundaries is going to be going, no, I deserve more. I matter. I'm not going to give more and just give and give and give and give and get the tiniest bit back, or even not even get anything, just live in the hope of receiving something back in terms of warmth, in terms of kindness, in terms of doing something, right? And setting boundaries here is going to be like a really like uphill battle, because you're going to essentially be pushing back against a relational loop that's been happening potentially for a very long time, right? If you think about caregivers, it's going to be your whole life, right? If you go to your dad and you're like, hey dad, I don't want us to like interact like this anymore. I don't want to have to chase you just to get what I feel are the basics of a parent-child relationship. They're going to hate that because they're winning in this equation, right? They're like getting all they want. They're getting a way better deal, you know? They're getting a lot of what they want, and you're giving a lot and they're not having to pay a lot, right? They're getting $50 for $2. They love that. They're going to want to keep that. So they're going to push really hard against this. They're going to make you feel really bad. They might gaslight you. They might make you feel guilty. They're going to really challenge this, and there's going to be some strong negative emotion coming out of them, right? They might be sad. They might be angry. They might verbally or physically do things to you. I don't know. Depends on the dynamic, guys. So those are all real things to be aware of. But when you have the right support network, and I think challenging and creating boundaries requires a really good support network. I think you need people in your corner helping you kind of feel understood and seen, because like the reality of it is, if you don't have that at all, it can be really hard to feel like, man, I deserve this. So have people that have your back, friends, a therapist, a coach, whoever you need, right, to help you talk this through, feel understood, and have your point of view validated, because that's really important to feeling empowered enough to set and keep boundaries, right? And if the relationship is valuable enough to the person that's taking from you a lot, eventually they'll get the message and they'll adjust their behavior. But also a big part of this is they might not adjust their behavior at all, right? They might not. And I think part of the equation that we have to be honest about here is that they might just leave and you might lose all of that. And I think that's part of what's really scary about setting boundaries with people like this is it's going to take a huge change for both of you, right? If you're in a marriage and the marriage sucks and you go, well, I want it to be better, and they go, well, I don't want to put the effort in. You can either accept that dynamic, work on it together if you're both willing to work on it, or leave. All of those are going to be really hard for all parties concerned, right? Because if you continue the dynamic, you're going to keep getting the short end of the stick. It's going to keep emptying you. You're going to feel more and more resentful, more exhausted. Life's going to be hard. The ideal outcome here is that you both decide to work on it together. So maybe you go to couples counseling. Maybe you have some kind of frank discussions about how you both feel in the relationship and both put your own emotional stuff on the table and work together to find a common goal and move forwards. That's great. If that happens, please do that. Please do that. But they also might go, hey, I'm not doing that. That's unreasonable. You suck. I want to keep doing option one. I want you to keep picking up after me and doing all the work, and I do nothing, and I benefit there. And you might have to be like, well, I'm just going to have to go because this is a lot. And I see it time and time again, unfortunately. People live their whole lives kind of being somebody else's bitch. And like, that sucks for everyone. And like, setting boundaries there is so hard. And it's almost like hard to even acknowledge that those boundaries need to be set, right? Because you feel selfish. Back to the topic at the top of the video, you feel selfish for having needs, for wanting to take up space, for wanting to have dreams, for wanting to have your own space and be an individual. But guess what? You deserve that. You deserve that. You really do. And I, for one, think it's tragic that we are pushed into those dynamics and situations. I hate it. I think everyone should have their own personhood, and their own personhood should be celebrated, empowered, and validated. That's my vibe. That's what I'm about. But not everyone feels like that, and that's why, unfortunately, therapy exists. Coaching exists to kind of address those people. But that's why setting boundaries isn't selfish. I've been Will. You've been wonderful. Take care of yourself, and I will see you in the next video. Bye-bye.